at the risk of setting a challenge to our people who are listening, if you move from conditioning to intuition, then the whole universe is going to open up for you and you follow your intuition instead of your conditioning. It's a totally different path. Well, good morning, everyone, and hi, Mike. Great to be with you again. Looking forward to our next conversation. Hope you're well, and I believe we have a name now.
We do, Pete. I've decided to call it the Soul Shift series because that is essentially what we're trying to do is shift people toward their soul and shift their soul in new directions. So yeah, beautiful.
I love that. It echoes a part of us that is absolutely and completely magnificent, and a piece of us that we sometimes forget is there guiding and leading the way.
Yeah.
So you might have a bit of divine inspiration in that name, Mike, do you think?
Hopefully, yes. We're not working alone.
So what about today? What are we going to share with the people?
Seems to me that this shift from the notion of only being a body and only being the intelligence of what we've learned so far, needs to be cast aside because for anyone that knows this from a direct point of view, for anyone that knows this, where they've been in trouble or they've had a hard time or they are desperately searching for answers or whatever it is, that they can tap into something that goes beyond what they've known. And I think that's a beautiful place to start.
It's I think that's a great place to start because for years I've seen, and I know you've seen as well, limitations with our current systems for helping people to move past difficult energies in their lives. And I remember getting a phone call maybe about 15 or 20 years ago, and someone said to me, "I hope you can help me. You're my last resort." And I thought, I think that's a compliment that they think I can help them. And I think that more of this metaphysical understanding is going to form part of a new system of healing once we move past the current systems that are restrictive. And maybe I'll start with a quick comment about cognitive behavioural therapy, if I can, Mike. And this is nothing against all of the great practitioners that are out there, psychologists in practice who are even friends of yours and mine. So, there's great people out there working within systems that have limitations, and cognitive behavioural therapy is exactly that. It relies on your cognitive abilities. It's about the behaviour that is on the top and not beneath, but they do investigate trying to find those pieces, but they fall short of understanding that trauma cannot always be addressed by talk therapies, because it's an energetic hit that people have in their systems. And I remember once, many years ago, I wrote an article for Nexus magazine about anxiety and the epidemic that anxiety was. And this is 6 or 7 years ago, and it's far bigger even now. But I theorized from my own practice that trauma is held, for example, if it's in the brain. I think it's more in the consciousness and the energy field these days. But I talked about how cognitive behavioural therapy works in beta brainwave patterns, and trauma is held in alpha brainwave patterns. And that's why it doesn't shift. And I got emails from all around the world thanking me for that article. People are starting to wake up that there are limitations to our current system. I'm sure you've seen that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And whilst the medical system is not going to back down easily, it's also, there's layers below that too, where there can be things held in the theta or the delta, simply because, say for instance, when babies are born, they are in delta all the time. So anything that's stored at that level, and I think that's quite some of the fundamental stuff that drives our society, is what's stored between 1 and 3, because that's the foundation of survival. Is they're stored at that level at delta and theta. So and they are stored also physically in the body. Um, but just this is something to say as well, is not to necessarily go out looking for some body worker that can clear all of that, simply because, and I say that having been one, simply because all of that is there and you can keep searching for it again and again and again. This is one of the things that I've picked up working with you as well, is just that thing of moving energetically to a higher level and treating everything below is much more graceful than just keep with a shovel, like digging into the swamp of all your dysfunction, which is essentially what happens when you're at that level. So that's another thought about that.
And it's important to understand that if that energy is trapped, then there's a message behind it as well. And I feel that, again, with due respect to aspects of the medical system, and I must admit I've lost a lot of faith in the medical system in recent years, and there's still good people in there as well. For example, I've had a sister who's been a nurse for 45 years. There's still people that are working hard in that medical system, but this culture of medication suppressing emotional, vibrational type issues is something that we really need to get away from. I once had a mother bring a daughter to me, and she said, I've got a daughter, and she was medicated on antipsychotics at 7 years of age because she saw dead people standing at the bottom of a bed. And the mother was at her wit's end, and the psychiatrist was at his wit's end. We've got to stop this behaviour, and we've got to modify this error in her brain chemistry. I just sit down with that mother and I said, your daughter's not psychotic, your daughter's psychic. And I had a conversation with her about how she could support her daughter through perhaps making contact with those beings, or even creating a space where they didn't intrude so much into her life. Very different conversation. So it makes me wonder how many people are in a similar boat, that are medicated because they have some sort of metaphysical understanding of the universe that's gone undiagnosed by the medical profession.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of what we were talking about last time we met, where we're about creating that map, and as long as science says, oh no, once somebody's dead, they're dead. And it's kind of like, there are so many layers to science and how they approach things. And even though there are people like Michael Newton, people like, what's the name of the fellow who was doing before Michael Newton, who's doing, looking at other realities to do with people and their soul lineage and all of that. I forget his name right now. But it's like they do all this work to show that thousands and thousands of people are having this experience, and yeah, it's kind of stubbornly ignored. And the beauty is that in a map of this, in asking that mother, for instance, how this is working with her daughter, how to unfold that story, like those beings that are there, and I'm going to go ahead and assume, yep, they are true, is to be able to then ask them, and what's her role in all of this as the daughter. I mean, I get that some are just sensitive, and I get that others have come here to release those souls that are trapped and all of that. So, there is still choice, but it's interesting to notice all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's time for us to look outside the square, because we all know that the world is speeding up. We know that consciousness is expanding, and we're looking at the old systems that are falling into a bit of decline or even disrepair. The gaps are widening, and people are looking for something. It's like there's a thirst for them to say, well, the current system's not working. Where else can I go? And that's why conversations like we're having here are so important for people, Mike, because the best we can ever do for people is encourage them to explore. to when you move into your intuition and you retire your conditioning. That's when life gets really interesting, because our conditioning holds us back, and we're conditioned into a society and even into a family set of values that have us locked in place. It was Carl Jung who said, can't really find out who we are until we surrender two types of conditioning: familial conditioning and societal conditioning. And, at the risk of setting a challenge to our people who are listening, if you move from conditioning to intuition, then the whole universe is going to open up for you and you follow your intuition instead of your conditioning. It's a totally different path.
Yeah, agreed. And there are actually, I will touch upon this too, because what a lot of people call intuition is getting this notion of saying, oh, this is for me, yes, okay, that's no for me. Do you know what I mean? It's very rudimentary, yes, no kind of answers to things. But that's such a nascent stage, like it's such an early stage. And there are trainings, there is work that you can do to train your intuition, where you can sit there and talk about somebody you've never met for 2 3 hours at a time, and just get deeper and deeper into truths,
Yeah.
and they will be literally blown away by it. So it's a big difference in just really opening to that with tools. It's not just making stuff up. It's there's actually tools around that. So it's good active. Um, it's a good active principle to work with all the time, I think.
And I think we're talking about the quantum field again here, Mike, because when we tune into another person, we are in some sort of a intuitive energetic exchange that offers information, that is in this shared quantum field between us. And there's a guy, a British scientist called Rupert Sheldrake, who I'm sure you've heard of, and he talks about morphic resonance. And in his work in biology and nature and all of the things he's looked at, he came to the conclusion that a daffodil, there is not enough information in its DNA for that daffodil to know to form that specific yellow shape with the base leaves and the trumpet type part that comes out of the center of the flower. There's not enough information in the DNA for it to know to take that shape, which is different from every other flower on the planet. So that's his theory of morphic resonance, is that we come together into these fields of information and we read that information in a way that we take it on board, and we know what to do, or we know how to read it. It's very powerful. It has its traps, like intergenerational trauma, groupthink, all of these things that can hold humanity back. But when we learn to read that field, as you're describing, when you tune into another person, I mean, imagine sitting in the presence of somebody who can read your energetic issues in a way that no one else can. I mean, that's got to be good for your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'm in this moment, I feel like it's worth mentioning too that one of the things that you developed, is looking at what happens to people when those messages, for instance, don't necessarily add up, um, and what occurs in their body. So it's just circling back to, trauma or thinking that's not necessarily aligned with where you want to go, and then the body has a response. Now, I know that there are, as a 50 plus year old man, that there are lots of things in my body that are having a response to stuff. And you actually worked with how to find that out. So talk to us about that, because I think that's really important.
If we go back to the purpose of all life, why do we take form? Why do we arrive in this shape? I mean, we are this incredible, unique collection of subatomic particles. We're not just one in 8 billion, but there's never been another Mike,
Mm.
and there's never been another Pete in the whole history of the world. And if you look at the generations that goes back, there's billions upon billions upon billions of people that have ever lived. And we're here, I feel, for a dedicated purpose. So what's our reason for being? Then, if we are consciousness in the quantum field, what's our purpose for being consciousness? And you started a conversation about the only way this could really happen is if consciousness has an inherent coding to evolve, to be the best it can be. Now, the best that we can be in human form is when we're in complete resonance. And when we resonate with the environment around us or with another person or we're in nature, what does that feel like? Well, that feels like a sense of peace and connection. If that's not there, then there's something in the way. And we started to see trauma, and these are a lot of the conversations you and I have had outside the podcast. I mean, this is about requests for resonance. Everything that happens in our life that isn't resonance is a request for resonance. So if it's anxiety, depression, grief, fear, they're simply requests for resonance. And like we've been working with, that we're not this human body, we're so much more. Consciousness is transportable, as we said in episode 1. If we allow that person to expand their consciousness where they can go beyond Mike and look back at Mike, they are in touch with that whole information and everything available in that quantum field outside the body. They look back at Mike and they can see his request from resonance from an expanded state of awareness and say, well, here they are. These are the pieces that Mike's working with. There's a greater purpose behind it. This is why they're being shown. And this is the choice that he can make once he understands those requests for resonance, because the universe is based on the fact that it continues to evolve, but it's also based on the energy of free will. And we have choice, which is sometimes we forget that we have choice.
Yeah, beautiful. And have you seen specific healings or shifts in people's consciousness from doing that work?
Absolutely. Perhaps one story that comes to mind is we worked with somebody, and this was in a group setting because we were teaching this work of vibrational echoes, as we call them, as you know. And this person was deeply distressed, and they had signed up for going to Bali, going into a retreat center. She was a healer. The partner was a chef. They were going to start this healing center. She'd run the classes. He'd do the catering. They'd get other local people in, and they'd start to run soul type workshops out of Bali.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was all a scam. And they put their deposit in, and the place didn't really exist, and they were taken for a ride and they lost their money. She was devastated, and mainly because she felt that she'd fallen out of touch with her purpose. And I'm trying to help humanity here. Why has the universe done this to me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this is a very experienced practitioner across a number of different modalities and approaches. So we did the vibration echoes, and we took her outside her body, and she looked at this incredible pain she was holding in her stomach about all of this. And she looked back and she said, oh my God, it's so small. First words out of her mouth, that when we expand out into this greatness and we look at this one thing that was sitting within her that she thought it had ended her purpose for this lifetime, was only a tiny piece. We ask those expanded questions. What's the greater purpose of this happening? What's the deeper meaning behind it? Why was it necessary for that person to have this experience? You can even ask, why was it set up that way before you came? So what it did was it released her to go and do something far more powerful. And in the end, I feel that path would have restricted her in what she's really meant to do here on this planet.
Yeah, for sure.
So when we take that elevated view, that expanded observation, things look different.
Yeah, I love that. It reminds me of the kind of work that is similar in looking at people's life purpose, and at the level at which the choices that we made before we came here, or the choices, and for those who don't even believe that, like even looking at the choices that just are in our heart, what we would love to do with this lifetime, whether we think it's possible or not. And it gives us this opportunity to then go, okay, well, say there are a whole bunch of things. So there's 10 things that we want to do with our life. And moving beyond the limitations that we've picked up, that now exist, we know exist at all of these different brainwave levels too, right? Like I'm not about to learn 10 languages. But if that was in my heart, absolutely I would focus on it. And moving from that place of paying attention to the limitations, getting rid of that. It's like the limitations are here. This is what we talked about yesterday, that alchemical pendulum, and yet this is what we're after. And so, and that it's like there's no opposite to it. That pendulum is moving from left to right all the time. But if you just go for what you love, you are gonna be caught by this from time to time. Yeah, you are going to be, it's going to make itself known. But that's always the case. That's third dimensional reality. That's the way that ego operates. Is it's just going to throw itself, on the tracks, trying to get your attention. But if we can focus on what it is that we love, and just go, okay, yep, that money's gone. Yep, that potential possibility in Bali is gone. But that's not what I'm after. What I'm after is, in this case, I guess, changing humanity. And so you just keep going for that and finding ways to make it happen.
And I think that path has its own resonance, and people move towards things and away from other things because they follow that resonance.
Mm.
And I've had a lot of people say to me over the years, I need to do this. I'm not sure why I have to do it, but I just know I have to do it. I have to either go there, or I have to buy that book, I have to learn that thing, to do this course, whatever it might be. People are just drawn in the direction of their soul once they stop and listen and seek that resonance. It's always drawing us forward in the right direction.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. And can you imagine how different the world would be if everyone did that? It's not saying anything about what people are going to do with their life, but I can guarantee you that the world would be a very different place if everyone was just going for what they love.
Yeah. I joke with people sometimes, Mike, and they say, when are you going to retire? And I said, well, I retired when I was 40. I retired 20 years ago. And they say, oh, really? Did you have lots of money? No. They say, well, what do you mean you retired? I said, well, retirement is when you stop doing what you have to do and you do what you want to do. And that's my definition of retirement. So I'm the busiest retiree I know.
It's true. I know a few of those.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's something that takes us on. And I look at the people that I've really admired. And, Michael Newton, of course, he did a teaching comeback at 81 years of age. And people like Bruce Lipton and Greg Braden are in their 70s. People like, Barbara Brennan. I mean, and, all these guys, they don't even get cracking till they're in their 70s, Mike. So we've got it all to look forward to.
Yeah, beautiful.
So, yeah, I think we continue our purpose. You never retire from your purpose. You just keep going. The challenge for everybody is just to feel into it and let it draw you along like a cork on the stream instead of trying to swim against the current.
Yeah, I think it's funny that you mentioned the 70s, because I actually spoke to an old friend of mine. I literally haven't seen him for 24 years, 24, 25 years. I spoke to him last night, and he's in his 70s. And there's just that stillness in him where he only does what he wants.
Yeah.
And so that means that what he's doing is his whole self is in it, and sometimes that what he wants is only for himself, and sometimes it's for others. But ourselves in it. So yeah, it's a good place to be, I think.
So, so I encourage people to follow that path. And, we have a term that you and I use, transcendence.
Mm.
And that's when you move back into resonance.
Yeah,
And when you find your resonance, you're in a higher vibration that serves not just you, but the rest of humanity.
yeah, gorgeous.
So,
So, what's your book today?
my book today, and I'm looking at my shelf just so I can grab it because I meant to have it on hand. Um, but I'll just talk to it. My bookshelf is too full. I can't see it. It's The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton.
Beautiful.
And I mentioned Bruce earlier, and you said something really important as well, Mike, earlier in the piece. And that was about when we're small and we're born and we're in outer sleep and our formative years, which, depending on which model you follow, might be 7, 10 years, 12 years. But we are really open, and our energy field is really open, and our brainwave patterns stay in the deltas and the thetas and the alphas, and that's why kids absorb as much as they do. But Bruce's message is a really important one, that we are not our genes, we are our environment. When you understand the formative years and you understand what you've absorbed in there, and you can go about doing something about it and releasing the things that you picked up in childhood, challenging those beliefs, moving outside of that conditioning, you're set free in ways that wasn't really possible. People will often say, depression runs in my family, that's why I'm depressed. But what they're saying is, I have absorbed that from my family environment when I was small, and so it rests with me as well. My question to people like that is often, well, why do you choose to continue this energetic legacy that isn't really yours? Why don't you set yourself free and all who come after you? And that's probably the whole ancestral things, probably a conversation for another time. But yeah, Bruce Lipton, a medical doctor, had to leave teaching medicine because he didn't believe it anymore. And he's done some incredible work on human consciousness as you tune into the quantum field and find that there's so much more to you than you ever thought.
Amazing.
So
Beautiful.
I want to throw to you for some hints. Any hints for the guys today?
Yeah, I've just got one actually, and it's along that similar lines as Bruce Lipton in a way, and that is to make a list of what you would love.
Yeah.
And I want to preface that advice with really looking at leaving behind everything that you think you know in order to do this. Um, all those people who want to make $1 billion because they feel poor, all those people that want to be connected to somebody because they feel alone, they're the things at the bottom of the pendulum, right? So let go of all of that and just write what it is that your heart would really love. What's the essence of it? And just sit with that, because it can be some really powerful stuff to just get the higher level truth of what you came here for. So that's it for today.
I think I'll make a list right now, Mike.
Good, mate.
That's a good thing. It brings us straight into our line of sight, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Should
yeah,
all do it. Yeah, we should all do it regularly.
yeah, yeah, gorgeous.
Yeah,
All
beautiful.
right. Thank you very much, Pete.
Good to
We
see you, Mike.
see everyone who is watching this for the next video, and have a great time till then.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. See you soon.